Welcome to worship today. And if you were here last night, you were grooving to the tunes of the Mamas and the Papas, and it was great. And if you missed it, you missed a great, wonderful concert. And you should feel a little bad because it was really great. And we had a great time. So watch when they come again and be sure to listen for them because they're going to be around the city. But it was wonderful. So we'll be grooving today too, but just to a little different beat. And there's lots of announcements in the bulletin. I want to draw your attention to some of them. The ABC group meets this week. Anyone who would like to attend, they're gathering, and there's all sorts of information in the bulletin at the Gabriel Roy Museum. It's a great opportunity, so please see that. And women, please come. Also, I want to thank our singers, our choir, our scripture reader, Fred Cross, and to our preacher today, who really isn't a guest. Reverend Irene Greenwood is with us a few times every year, and we're always happy to see her and hear her, and it gives me an opportunity to go down to be with the Sunday school. So thank you for coming. Also, you might note that the harvest dinner, the harvest supper is coming up. There's a list at the back of the church for volunteers. Please sign up. Also, knowing that they need some homemade pies and whatever else is back there, but get your tickets so that we can ensure that there'll be a good number for that fundraiser for the church. Next Sunday is Mission and Service Sunday. We'll be looking at what do we do with those dollars and cents that we give to mission and service. Also at the back of the church is a suggestion box. Sometimes people talk about what happens in worship, and there's always some thought about what could we do to enhance worship. Maybe there's something you really, really like, and you might really, really want us to do it. So if you put it in the box, hopefully we can. If it's within our possibility, we will. And if there's something that maybe, you can always talk to me, but if it's something you really don't particularly like, you can put that in there too, and we'll see what we can do. But it's an opportunity for you to share with us what we can do on Sunday morning to enhance our worship. Also, don't forget, Wednesday morning is Bible study. We're studying the Psalms. All are welcome to attend. And I think that's all of my announcements. I want to ask at this time for Bill to come forward, and then Katie.
Good morning. I wanted to just make a few comments with respect to the council meeting which was held on Tuesday, the 15th, most recently. Before I do that, though, I'd like to just follow up on Karen's comments about the groovy thing from last night. First time I've ever seen people dance in the aisles, in the front of the church, in the back of the church. So I think everybody had a great time. The event raised a bit over $1,500 after expenses. I would thank Glenn Neufeld, who was the driving force behind this event right from the very inception to the end. So now getting to the council, I guess one of the main things that I see is, of course, the financial report. And the financial report that was presented most recently was to the end of September, so 3/4 of the way through the year. At that point, member givings were $158,700, which is 6.6% better than what we were expecting at this point. And the givings have been strong throughout the year, and I think they will continue throughout the year so that we will end on the plus side of what we did expect. That was, as I said, 6.6% above what we expected. And overall expenses were $304,000 and a bit, and that was 0.5% less than we expected. Now, expenses are going to continue to carry on. We've had a lot of expenses this past year with respect to the heating system, and some of the work that was done back in January still has not been, it's been billed, but it's under debate as to what the amount should be. And so we're looking at $5,000 or $6,000 yet of further expenses on the heating system. We also are looking at an expenditure of about $6,500 on the stairways, the west stairways on the Kingsway Street. And that may not happen this year, but it will happen early next year if it doesn't happen this year. Rentals have been running strong. The so-called miscellaneous rentals are $17,400, which is about $700 more than this time last year. And that might not seem like a lot, but these rentals take a lot of work. Charlotte puts a lot of work into the organization and the contracts, etc. And David Reeford is here probably at least once for every rental, if not multiple times, particularly those rentals that involve concerts. And the rentals vary in size from $60 up to $600 or $700, but most of them are a couple of $100. So it takes a lot of rentals to get $17,000. Our lease with the daycare still isn't finalized. Negotiations have been going on for the last number of months. And I think in the next week we'll come to a conclusion on that. And any amounts that should be paid will be retroactively covered. Most of the time, or a lot of the time at the council meeting was spent on strategic planning, looking at where we are and where we want to be and who we think we are and where we will be 10 years from now. Now, a lot could be said on that, but I'll just leave it at this. We had a long and good discussion. I think those that were present at that meeting thought it was a good discussion. It must have been because it lasted until 10 to 10 on Tuesday night. So thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm pleased to announce that we have another concert coming up this November. The choir and the handbell choir are presenting a concert on November the 22nd called For the Earth. And it's a very, it ties in very well. I was considering this concert, and then Karen mentioned that she was going to be focusing on creation and the climate and how we are stewards of the earth for the whole fall season. And I thought, it just ties perfectly. This concert is going to be asking the questions. You see in the bulletin, I wrote some questions. How can we be better stewards for the earth? How can we move forward in hope that humanity can create a better future? And how can we celebrate our home while also acknowledging the harm we have created? And I found there's a brand new work. We are actually doing the Western Canada premiere of Missa Pro Terra, which is a reimagining of the traditional Catholic Mass setting by Canadian composer Paul Aitken. It's having its world premiere in a couple weeks in Nova Scotia, and then we're going to do it a few weeks later here before it has its orchestral grand premiere in Carnegie Hall in March. Ours will be a little more muted than that. But the whole concert is, this is the centerpiece of this Mass that he has taken this familiar setting, a Kyrie, asking for mercy, Gloria, a Credo, Sanctus, Holy, 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 and an Agnus Dei, the Lamb of God, and added some new texts and some new focus to it to sort of bring it into a contemplative way of thinking about our climate and climate change. We also have the handbells joining us for a few pieces, some soloists, and some readings as well. And it should be a really lovely concert that will get us thinking. So that's Friday, November the 22nd. Entry is by donation. And please, if you have friends at other churches, I think many churches this fall have been focusing on creation and our role in creation. And I think this will be a really nice way to sort of culminate that, that focus. So I hope to see you there. The choir is working very hard on this brand new work that has never been heard before, so it's very exciting to us. I'd also like to introduce us to a new song. doing lots of new songs this fall. If you go into More Voices, number 213, this is going to be our benediction today. More Voices 213, take up his song. This will be our benediction that Irene has introduced us to. But I'm glad that she did, because we can save this one. We'll learn it now and then keep it in your mind, and we'll use it in Advent as our benediction, because we can change peace to hope and to love and to joy as well. This week we'll just sing about peace. So we'll do it in the usual way. We'll have Wes play it through. We'll have the choir sing it once, and then everybody join in. Thanks, Wes. Today at the end of the service, and then keep it in mind for December. Thank you.
Let us join together in acknowledging the territory and land on which we worship. We acknowledge that this land on which St. Andrews River Heights United Church gathers is Treaty 1 land, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Oji-Cree, and Dakota peoples in the heart of the Métis Nation. We acknowledge the Inuit and all the peoples of this great land on Turtle Island and their ancestors. Today, this meeting place is still the home of many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land.
Well, good morning. I'm happy to be here this morning, and I would invite us to join in the invitation to worship as it is printed in your bulletin. Jesus asks, "Can you drink the cup I drink?" You can. Jesus responds, "You will drink this cup." What have we done? What have we said? In worship, a light shines, guiding us, that we might see a way to fulfill our commitment. A light shines, that we may see the cup from which we drink. May we be open to the light and seek to drink deeply from the cup. Our hymn is from Voices United, number 603, in loving partnership. Can you drink this cup? With these words, Jesus challenges those who would follow him to understand what he is really about. This is the crux of Mark's gospel. This is the pivotal point on which the story of Jesus turns. Can you drink this cup? On this Sunday in worship, we are challenged by these words. Challenged to understand, challenged to know how they apply to us, and challenged to know how they apply to all. On this Sunday in worship, we are encouraged to find hope and comfort in these words, not just for ourselves, but for all of creation. I would invite us to join together in the prayer that is printed in your bulletin. Let us pray. Holy One, as followers of Jesus, we gather in. Together we build a community of love and caring for all people and indeed for all creation. In this time of worship, may we be reminded of one of the symbols of our faith, a cup. And as we think about this cup, may we find both comfort and challenge. May our faith be strengthened and our willingness to serve bring hope and love to our world. Amen. So I believe there are some young people here this morning, so I would invite the young folk to come up to the front while I get organized for them. Okay. Is this working? No? Okay. I'll talk loud. Because it says it's working because it's green. All right. What have I got here? Got any idea what this is? Here? I'm going to show you that. Oh, it says it's still a little wet all over the floor. We'll get that later. What is it? Rice. It is rice. I was going to bring something to put underneath this so it wouldn't spill all over the floor. And I forgot it. Okay, this is rice. Rice is what? A food that is eaten all over the world, right? Okay. So, do you like rice? You do? Yeah. Thank you. It is okay. This one isn't working either. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. We won't worry about technology. So, rice is eaten all over the world. Now, if this was all the rice in the world that could be eaten in a year, let's pretend that is okay. Which of these things would you like to carry yours home in? Which one would you like to have to take to your home so you could eat rice for a year or food for a year? Would you like this one? Would you like to carry it with this? Would you like to carry it with? You don't get very much, will you? What about this? No, because you wouldn't get very much. These ones you wouldn't be able to hold on to. Well, I want to tell you that the way there is food in our world, and all this food, not all the food in the world, we who live in Canada, most of us would get something like this to carry all our food that in the school that he goes to, he has a lot of friends who can't afford to bring a lunch to school. So they get some food at home, but not enough to really hold them all day. Do you have any kids in your school like that? You know? But maybe don't have enough food to bring a lunch. Maybe not. But they would have maybe some food, so they could bring theirs home, maybe that much in a year. Not very much, but enough to eat some of the time, right? Well, there are places in our world where they would only have that much. They would only not have enough to eat every day. Do you think that's fair? No. What do you think we can do about that? What do you think we can do about that? We could share, that would be one thing we could do. Give food, yeah, you can give to the poor, that would be one thing we could do. Anything else, big people?
Stop the war.
Stop the wars and things that happen in our world that make it hard for people to get fed. Right now there's a war going on and it means that people aren't getting fed. Yeah. Anything else? Support, how? Community support, people support. One of the things that we also do is, one of the reasons why people don't have enough food is because they can't grow enough food, or the food that they grow gets shipped to us, but they don't get to eat it. That doesn't seem fair, does it? So maybe we can create ways, maybe our governments can create ways where we don't have to hog everything. You know, we don't have to throw our food out. Do you ever throw food out in your house? Yeah, that's kind of a waste, isn't it? We do in our house too. But maybe we can encourage the world not to be so greedy and let people have their own food that they grow. And maybe we can do things like helping people grow their food. And one of the things that happens in Canada, there's something called the Canadian Food Grains Bank. And we can make donations to that organization. And they help people, they send some of our food over to countries that don't have food, so that's a good thing. But even more important is they send technology and help for people to be able to grow their own food. So they're not necessarily dependent on us to feed them. They learn, they have new equipment that can help grow food in their own places. So I'm going to invite you now to think about this as you go home today. Think about ways in which you can share what you have. And as you get older, when you're small, you can't do as much when you're small and young. Because you don't run the world, do you? No, but when you get older, you can begin now to do good things. But when you get older, you have more power to help others too. And that's what we can do. We can make donations to something like the Food Grains Bank or to the Mission and Service Fund of our church. And that can help feed the world. And that's important. All right, you can go to your Sunday school and I'll help clean up the mess later. It's just rice. And it's not cooked. Our hymn is, number 567. Will you come and follow me?
Will you come and follow me? Of the four Gospels in Scripture, Mark is the most concise recording of an understanding of Jesus' ministry. In today's reading from that Gospel, we have Mark's declaration of the turning point in the Jesus story. It is also the turning point of our own commitment to faith. We are invited to listen to this story, to ponder its meaning, and think about the question asked by Jesus, can you drink this cup? How we answer this question speaks deeply about what we understand our commitment to faith may mean. I always find this passage difficult because it's one of those cases where the disciples simply don't get it. And as a result, James and John ask a very inappropriate thing of Jesus. I'm looking forward to hearing what Irene tells us in just a few minutes. No doubt about it. This is Mark's Gospel, chapter 10, verses 35 to 45. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Appoint us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink, and with the baptism with I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to appoint, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to become angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. Instead, whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, But it is not so among you. Instead, whoever wishes to become great among you, you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Let us pray. As we reflect on words that have been read, as we think about what it means to follow in the way of Jesus, speak to us, challenge us. Amen. Can you drink the cup that I drink? We hear those words a lot in today's service. We hear them a lot because in the Gospel of Mark, they are very significant words. One of the problems with reading Scripture in church is that we tend to only read little snippets at a time, and we don't have an opportunity to see how all those little snippets fit together. So I suspect that many of us don't realize that in Mark's Gospel there is a series of 3 events in which Jesus talks about his impending suffering. And each time, one or more of the disciples responds in ways that show that they do not understand very well what Jesus is about. The first time Jesus makes one of these statements about his upcoming suffering, Peter responds by telling him not to talk like that. To this, Jesus responds, "Get behind me, Satan." Following the second statement of Jesus about his upcoming suffering, the disciples argued amongst themselves about who is the greatest. And Jesus tells them the first will be last and the last will be first. And then we have today's reading. And after Jesus spoke about his future suffering, James and John, 2 of the disciples, seek him out and ask that they be allowed to sit on his right and on his left in his future glory. And this is when Jesus responds with his question, "Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with?" Now, Jesus obviously had a different understanding of the request of James and John than James and John had themselves. So I would like us to think about James and John for a moment and to figure out where their question was coming from. To begin with, we need to ask who James and John were. Well, what we know about them is they were the sons of Zebedee, a fisher who didn't seem to get upset that his sons wanted to leave the family business to follow Jesus. So that may mean that he was a relatively wealthy fisher. He could afford to have 2 of his sons leave the family business. So James and John themselves may have been relatively secure, financially speaking, at least in comparison to many other folk who were around them. There is also some possibility that the mother of James and John was Salome. Salome, who sometimes is understood to be the sister of Jesus' mother, Mary's sister. So James and John could possibly have been cousins of Jesus. So they may have claimed they had some kind of in with Jesus because of their relationship, some place of privilege that others did not have. It could be that with their request, James and John were laying stake to a place of privilege in relationship to Jesus, one that put them ahead of everyone else. And that is when Jesus asked, "Can you drink the cup that I drink?" You think you are more deserving than others? So if that is the case, Can you drink my cup? And with very little thought, James and John responded, you betcha. The other disciples, of course, were understandably upset, and Jesus took the opportunity to tell them all that whoever wants to be first shall be the slave of all. And with that response, Jesus reminds us all that those who have privilege in our world will ultimately be the servant of all. The cup of privilege will become the cup of service. Now, there is a tendency in the church, or at least in the church that is populated largely by white folk, there is a tendency to see this story and the reference to be servant of all as a call to charity. And we heard the children talk about that a little bit today. If people are poor, we can give them something. And we are pretty good at that in the church. We give donations to those in need. Perhaps maybe we make special donations for One Just City, the M&S Fund, Winnipeg Harvest, Canada Food Grains Bank, Women's Centers, and so much more. We make a choice to give financially, and sometimes we even budget for that choice to make donations. But there are also times when what we give to those who have little are our leftovers. About 3 years ago, my partner Joan and I did that in a big kind of way. We cleaned out our house because we were moving into a smaller suite. And we had a lot of stuff that wasn't going to fit in our smaller suite. And so we gave it to a charity, most of it. And that in itself is not a bad thing. In fact, it is a good thing. It is better that someone gets to use it rather than dumping it in the landfill, after all. However, that is not that is not giving up our place of privilege in the world. That is not serving those who are understood to have less privilege in our world. In fact, in that case, one could argue that it was largely serving our own privilege. We had to get rid of stuff because we no longer had room for it, so it suited us to be able to give it away. It was a bonus that it might have helped someone else. It is a charity model of service. It is not a sharing of privilege. I have known for many years that I live a privileged life, but that became much more evident to me in recent years. If we didn't already know this before, the last 5 years in the life of the world have shown us just who in our world has privilege. These last few years have shown us who are the James and Johns in our world. For example, think back to our most fun time of recent years, the pandemic. That was facetious. And remember how happy many of us were to receive our first COVID vaccine. It gave us a sense that maybe life would begin to return to normal. And so we lined up for that first vaccine, and then we lined up for our second. And when it came time to making appointments, or to start making appointments for our third vaccine, we came to realize that many in the world had not yet received their first. And I have to admit that I did not consider turning my third shot down in order that others might get their first. Even within our own country, there were many who did not have equal access to vaccines. I am reminded of the indigenous community that received vaccines that had already expired. Or people who, because of language barriers or barriers caused by the need to work 2 and 3 jobs, in addition to looking after children and elderly parents, many who spoke a different language didn't know didn't understand or know how to go about getting those vaccines and didn't have the opportunity to learn. Or people whose trust of authority for very good reasons has been eroded over the years. And so they were reluctant to trust the authority that told them to get a vaccine. I am also reminded of the vaccines that Canada sent to other countries because that particular vaccine was not up to our standards. Another example of our privilege has to do with how we manage refugee situations. When we needed workers in this country and when we had lots of available housing, we were happy to accept refugees. And we often couched it in terms of caring. These people need our support. And many of us genuinely wanted to help. We really did. And we did it out of a sense of caring. But it is interesting, now that we have a housing shortage and the price of housing is escalating, we make it more and more difficult for refugees to get here. Paperwork takes years and years and sometimes never happens. We refuse foreign students and increase their tuition costs so that they can no longer come. And often to begin with, we invited foreign students simply because they paid a much higher tuition than people from our own country. They kept our post-secondary institution going. But there are other issues that show who has privilege in our world. For example, the number of indigenous communities that still lack clean drinking water. There aren't very many white communities that don't have access to clean water, and if they should lose their clean waters, governments go into action immediately to remedy the situations. Or I think of the current situation in Palestine, Israel. We tend to think that the horrors that are occurring in that land today began a year ago with the horrendous events of October 7th. But the reality is they have been going on long before that day. Sometimes we acknowledge that the current events had their beginnings in 1948, when the State of Israel was formed by an act of Western nations, and Palestinians were removed from their homes, and many eventually ended up enclosed behind walls in what is now known as Gaza. Others in the West Bank are constantly in danger of being removed from their homes and their means of living in the West Bank. None have freedom of movement. Well, I can rant on and on about this kind of stuff, and I usually do get carried away. And it's not really the best way of dealing with any of these kinds of situations. Nor is it the best way to understand Jesus. When Jesus was faced with his two friends who, from their place of privilege, asked to be treated in an even more privileged manner, he responded by putting back the question, putting it back on them. Can you sit beside me and drink from the cup that I drink? If you can do that, then follow me. I'm heading to Jerusalem. Come and sit with me there. Come with me to a confrontation with authority. Come with me to suffering and death. But along the way, I am going to help some people. I am going to speak out against injustice. I am going to stand up for some people who are faced with injustice. And I am going to make some people angry. And I am going to suffer, and I am going to die. But along the way, I will help some people understand love. I will challenge people to live differently, and I will help people to have courage. And I will show people what life is ultimately about. It is about love. It is about caring. It is about a just and equal sharing. And on the way, I will share my cup with you, and I will share my cup with them who are suffering. With them. Jesus says to all of us, come, share my cup. A cup of challenge, but also a cup of love. A cup of pain, but also a cup of healing. Not just for you, but for all those who are hurting. A cup of sorrow, but a cup of joy. Not just in some far-off future, but now, in the present. Joy to be shared with all. Jesus is happy to share his space with all of us. But there is a cost that goes with this privilege, and it is a cost of service. It is the cost of giving up some of our privilege in order that others might also share this cup. Can you drink this cup? It is a difficult question. One I struggle with every day of my life. But my sense is that many of us are doing just that, struggling with what it means to challenge authorities in our world who harm rather than help, what it means to support those who are crying out for justice. For Jesus, it meant taking a great risk. So today I invite all of us to come and to continue to ask ourselves this question. In what ways do we share this cup? I suspect many of us, most of us, are already sharing this cup of Jesus in some way. But also I suspect that most of us can drink a little deeper from this cup, offer a little more, reach out a little further to support those who are in need of help, or even educate ourselves about what is going on in the world. Try to deepen our understanding of the issues of the world. Hear those words of Jesus. Can you drink the cup I drink? Think on those words. It's a pretty hard and difficult question. But know that when we drink of that cup, that Jesus understands, that God understands just how hard it is. And God's love is with us through it all, our successes and our failures in following his way. Let us drink from that cup. Amen. Our hymn is in more voices, 165. There is a time that we must rise. It doesn't talk about a cup that we drink, but it is sung, I think, with that same idea in mind. There is a time. going to change a little bit the order of service. Sorry, folks, I just want to get you all confused, but I'm just realizing that we are running kind of long here. So I'm going to invite us to join in the offering, to have our offering presented now. And then I'm going to do the affirmation and the Lord's Prayer, and I'm not going to have the prayer of thanksgiving and concern today. If that's okay with folks, does that get you mixed up all over there? All right. So if we could have the offering brought forward at this time, please. Or gathered, I guess, or whatever it is we do.
We just set this back of the church.
Oh, okay. You know, every church does this differently. I get all mixed up. So then we will have the offertory hymn at this point then. Please be seated. I just had this panic that maybe in my rearranging of things I'd missed a soloist or something, and I was going to go, oh my gosh. So I would like us now to turn into your bulletin to the affirmation that is there. And at the end of it, we will just move right into the Lord's Prayer. There is a sacred power, one that calls to us. Can you drink this cup? There is a sacred power. Will you drink from the cup of justice?
Will you drink with the words we speak, calling for a world in which all have a right to life and an opportunity to share the bounties and beauty of creation?
There is a sacred power. Will you pour the cup of hope?
With courage, we make changes that offer hope to our world, sometimes in small drops and sometimes in splashing torrents.
There is a sacred power. Will you fill to overflowing the cup of love?
In love, we offer tenderness, comfort, and a will to challenge.
There is a sacred power. Will you offer the cup of peace?
We share our openness with one another, guided by honesty and compassion.
There is a sacred power. Will you rejoice in the cup of diversity?
We celebrate different traditions, colors, ideas, belief systems, languages, and thoughts.
There is a sacred power. Will you honor the cup of life?
Life flows from us, and it is sacred.
And together we pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And we join in our concluding chorus. Take up the song of peace. Take up his song, we take up the cup. Go in peace, living abundantly, bringing hope and joy in abundance to our world. Go in the love of God. Amen.